Good evening, everybody. It's been 5 days since a crazed killer opened fire on a Las Vegas music festival, killing 58, wounding almost 500 people. But police appear to be no closer to knowing his motive for that massacre or even much about his life. Law enforcement authorities tell that Stephen Paddock's arsenal included tracer ammunition, which lights up as fired, allowing shooters to follow the trajectory of their shots in the dark. Paddock's girlfriend has reportedly told the FBI that he exhibited mental health symptoms, and she said Paddock would lie in bed, moaning and screaming. Whatever else the evil madman was, he was a very good gambler. IRS records show Paddock was a highly successful gambler, earning at least $5 million in 2015 alone. And while those are key details, the motive behind the massacre he committed remains elusive. Fox News correspondent Dan Springer in Las Vegas with our report.
Another day, and despite running down more than 1,000 leads, investigators still have no answers about why Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock did what he did.
While some of it has helped create a better profile into the madness of this suspect, we do not still have a clear motive or reason why. We all want answers. We have looked at everything, literally.
They again contend there's no sign of terrorism.
We're also aware, of course, that ISIS has repeatedly claimed responsibility, which today I can tell you that we have no known nexus to.
As vigils for the victims of the Las Vegas shooting continue, we do know more about what else Paddock may have been planning. A law enforcement official says that Paddock purchased 1,000 rounds of tracer ammunition a month ago from a private seller at a Phoenix gun show. Tracer rounds, which contain a pyrotechnic charge that leave an illuminated trace of their path when fired to ensure accuracy, were found in Paddock's sniper's perch at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. Police also found a document containing the name of the man who sold him the ammunition in early September. Other cities remain on alert as investigators look at Paddock's interest in attacking additional areas. Boston police say authorities will step up security for concerts and sporting events amid news that Paddock researched sites in and around Fenway Park and the Boston Center for the Arts.
The FBI reached out to us to let us know Boston was on the radar screen. We just have information that he was on possible sites looking at Boston, but there's nothing to indicate he ever made it here or he ever stepped foot in Boston.
While officials still haven't been able to establish a motive for Paddock's actions, focus is still on his girlfriend, Mary Lou Danley. There are reports that say she's told the FBI he was experiencing mental health symptoms and would lie in bed moaning and screaming. Despite that, investigators are acknowledging the unprecedented nature of the case.
In the past, terror attacks or mass murder incidents, motive was made very clear in most of those cases by a note that was left, by a social media post, by a telephone call that was made, by investigators mining computer data. Today, in our investigation, we don't have any of that uncovered. I wish we did.
That lack of a clear motive obviously frustrated everybody, especially the police. Some good news, though, today is dozens of the injured left area hospitals. We're now down to 59 still getting treatment, 26 of them in critical condition. And tomorrow, Vice President Mike Pence shows up for what's called a unity walk as Las Vegas tries to heal from this tragedy. Lou?
Dan, thank you very much. Dan Springer from Las Vegas. Rex Tillerson's days at the State Department may be numbered. Trump advisors and allies reportedly discussing his replacement. Some suggesting Tillerson be replaced by CIA Director Mike Pompeo. White House Chief of Staff John Kelly is not among those. He's said to be discouraging such a move and advocating for stability and Tillerson to remain as Secretary of State. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders today said the president still has confidence in Tillerson.
As he said yesterday, or 2 days ago, as I said yesterday, nothing has changed despite what you may read in the media or watch on TV. I would certainly trust the president in my comments far above those of other reporters.
Our first guest tonight is a veteran of the Trump White House, a highly respected American military and intelligence analyst, the former strategist and deputy assistant to President Trump. Now, Chief Strategist for the Make America Great Again Coalition, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Good to have you with us, Seb. It's been too long. Let's talk about what's going on in the environs that you've just recently departed, and that is a White House that is riven with conflict, and apparently so, between a defense secretary who jumps the president and makes a recommendation to a U.S. senator demanding a yes and no question before the president can make an announcement, and a Secretary of State who apparently the president learned in July had called him a moron.
Lou, great to be back on the show. It has been too long. The day after I resigned, the president reached out to me. He asked me for my support outside the building. That's what I'm doing right now with the Make America Great Again coalition. I'm not going to cast aspersions or critique individuals inside the administration, but I will say one thing. I got to know Mike Pompeo when I came into the administration. He is a hard charger. He is a 101% Trump loyalist. If anybody can shake the State Department into some kind of sense after decades of not acting in the best interests of the United States and being devoted ideologically to multilateral kumbaya globalism, it might just be DCI Mike Pompeo.
You say kumbaya globalism. They seem more intent on, they seem something closer to barbaric and filled with bloodlust for those who actually care about their country, the sovereignty of their nations, and most especially this president and his agenda. This is a conflict that it seems some in the White House want to submerge and for the public to ignore, but it is fundamental to what we're watching politically in this country right now.
Lou, you're absolutely right. We have to remember what happened on November the 8th. November the 8th was a political revolution. The rank outsider, an individual who has never served in political office, who never served in the U.S. military, destroyed the 16 establishment GOP rhino candidates, and then wiped the floor with a woman who officially spent $700 million on a position she thought was owed to her. Donald Trump is the anti-establishment candidate. He wants to drain the swamp. There are lots of people in the bureaucracy. And Lou, when people say swamp, and I dealt with the swamp inside the White House, they think it's Congress, they think it's Capitol Hill, they think it's the politicians. For me, the far more obstructive element of the swamp are the bureaucrats, the GS-15s, the GS-12s, who think they know better than the president. And it's people like Mike Pompeo that can help the president drain the swamp from people who have ideological reasons to undermine our nation.
In which way will the president go, do you believe, on the issue of non-certification or certification of the Iranian nuclear deal, one which, as you well know, and our viewers will know, he campaigned against thoroughly, calling it the worst deal that he had ever seen. And now we have all sorts of his closest advisors counseling, including General James Mattis, before the Senate, saying that he felt it was in the national interest. This is, to many people, confounding and deeply concerning.
Lou, I was in the Oval the day it was recertified last. There were a handful of us with the president. He was seated at the Resolute desk. There was Steve Bannon, myself, Rex Tillerson, General McMaster, and Secretary Mnuchin. And it was only Steve and myself that supported the president in saying we have to decertify this deal. It is bad for America, bad for Israel, bad for global security. And and the way he expressed it back then, it was clear to me this is the last time he's going to recertify, and it's not going to happen a third time. That's my prediction for next week, for the 12th. And since the IAEA has stated unequivocally that Iran is in breach of Section T of the Iran deal by obstructing inspectors accessing the military sites, we have to kill it. It's a bad deal. It's time to decertify.
The ignorance of those globalists who are insisting on a corporatist solution, which would be to simply exceed to the reality created by Iran in the Middle East, which becomes more disruptive, which becomes more destabilizing by the month. Forget their history and the fact that they have killed so many, are responsible for the killing of so many American troops. For this to have been ignored by the Obama administration is madness. For this president, for his position, his philosophy, his agenda, to have to put up with the kind of nonsense that is emanating from so many of his advisors in national security, the Defense Department, the list goes on. A lot of us, I will speak for myself, I find astounding.
There's a fundamental issue here. Yes, the Obama administration actually facilitated Iran with tens of billions of dollars, with ransom monies, with all kinds of things that strengthen a dictatorship. But there's a deeper issue, Lou. I'm a child of the Cold War. My parents escaped communist dictatorship. You've been around a while. You know, you do not get good deals with tyrannies. Whether it's Adolf Hitler in Munich, whether it's Brezhnev, or whether it's the mullahs in Iran, they just don't abide by these agreements. So the whole thing is flawed from the get-go.
Sebastian Gorka, as always, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Lou.
Louisiana bracing tonight for a tropical storm Nate. It's expected to make landfall as a hurricane this weekend, but the hurricane season already taking a toll, of course, on the Gulf economy and the national economy, which lost 33,000 jobs in September, according to the latest employment report, because of hurricanes Harvey and Irma, two of the most powerful storms to ever hit the United States. The first loss of jobs in 7 years in this country. Nearly 1.5 million Americans with jobs say they were unable to work because of bad weather. But the labor market is still showing considerable underlying signs of strength despite the hit from hurricanes. The unemployment rate fell to 4.2%. That is the lowest level since 2001. And more Americans found jobs in what is an expanding labor force. That is a strong signal indeed of a healthy labor market. Labor force participation as a result climbing to the highest level since March of 2014. All good signs for our future. We're coming right back with much more. Stay with us. Who else but the misguided chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee could insist there's an open issue of collusion after 9 months of investigation and no evidence? We take up what is clearly the attempted subversion of President Trump's administration. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer joins us here next. And the Gulf Coast, believe it or not, now preparing for another possible hurricane. The deadly tropical storm Nate now barreling toward Louisiana and the Florida Panhandle. We'll have the latest for you on the storm's path and much more straight ahead. We're coming right back. Well, the only evidence of collusion with the Russians leads straight and directly to Facebook. Facebook's Russian collusion going further than previously thought. The Wall Street Journal reporting that Facebook cut references to Russia from a public report in April about attempts to influence the election. Instead, the Facebook report concluded that, quote, malicious actors engaged to influence campaigns. It wasn't until last month that Facebook publicly acknowledged and identified Russia as the source of those efforts. Special Counsel Robert Mueller's office apparently leaking now. A new report says Mueller's team met with former British spy Christopher Steele, the author of that anti-Trump discredited dossier, who was hired by Democratic opposition research firm Fusion GPS. Senate Judiciary Chairman Senator Chuck Grassley today sent a stern letter to the FBI asking whether that dossier was the basis of the Bureau's Russian investigation. Why wasn't that question asked a long time ago? Well, joining us tonight, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, now a senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research. Tony, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me to be on. Sure.
Let's start with the Facebook collusion. The Journal, by the way, doing extraordinary reporting on this relationship between Russian agents, Facebook, their advertising, and the election, specifically Facebook's collusion with the Russians as a result. Why isn't there a congressional investigation? That is the only evidence of collusion that I'm aware of in this country.
Well, that's the issue. We've seen multiple and continuous investigations of every peripheral issue except core issues which have clear and direct evidence. This is what I don't get. It's like they'll take a rumor and go do that. But these things which you have facts laid out before you, and then further, as you pointed out, Lou, Facebook wouldn't even own up to it. They tried this Orwellian, let's remove all references from Russia and do this report. So Facebook is not in any manner here above reproach or honest. And plus, as you remember,
I think we can be more direct than that, Tony. Facebook has immense political power, and they are absolutely applying it. And they are in an echo chamber with the left and the Democratic Party.
And that's the issue. They were actually working to suppress trending news items that were of conservative nature, and to me, there's no evidence they've stopped that. And it's a constant information operation. And the only reason they did this adjustment here is because they got caught.
Let's turn to somebody else that's gotten caught, and it appears the special counsel has a leak, and we learned that former British spy Christopher Steele, the author of that discredited dossier on Trump, they met with him. Why are they suddenly leaking, and why is that suddenly relevant, and why aren't we hearing more about what is going on?
Lou,
from our Senate Intelligence Committees, for example, and Senate and House.
This is true desperation. This is telling me, he's got the foot to the pedal, the pedal to the metal, and they got nothing left. When you've got nothing left, you go to essentially what I would say a Hail Mary play. As to the Senate and House, I watched with great interest, Lou, this hearing this last week, and it reminded me of, remember old Dandy Don Meredith, Monday Night Football. Turn out the lights, the party's over. There's nothing left. They have exhausted every single investigative lead. They've gone back to the dossier, and it's just like there's just nothing there, and all they're doing now is playing out the clock to try to get something.
To bring it back to the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Senator Richard Burr, the chairman, or at least ostensibly the guy leading it. We know it's now Senator Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat, who's leading it. But Burr says himself that he would like to share with us their initial findings. The problem is there are no initial findings because they haven't found any evidence of collusion. Stop, finish, end it. Why in the world would anyone with any common sense go beyond that? Why not shut it down? Why not Mitch McConnell saying enough already? Why not Richard Burr saying enough already?
Well, if he had courage, he would do that. And I see the House, not piling on, not trying to drag things too much out. The bottom line is, Lou, these people have to have political courage to do the right thing. I think some of them are afraid that they're going to be pilloried and criticized by folks on the left.
Who are they afraid of? Are they afraid of K Street? Are they afraid of the Business Roundtable? Are they afraid of Mitch McConnell? The deep state? Who is it? The billion-dollar donors? I mean, the billionaire donors? I mean, that's the real question now, because what they're not afraid of are the American people.
Colonel, and I think that's the issue.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, is always great to have you with us.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Should the special counsel pivot from Trump to Zuckerberg in his quest for evidence of Russian collusion? We'd like to hear from you on that. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. On Wall Street, stocks closing mixed following the jobs report. The Dow down 2 whole points from its record highs. The S&P down 3, the Nasdaq up 5. Big day. Volume on the big board slipping down to 2.8 billion shares. The Dow and S&P posting gains for 4 weeks straight, both up more than 1%. The Nasdaq also up more than 1% on the week. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, the motive for the worst mass shooting in American history, still a mystery. We take up the search for answers with one of the most decorated officers in the Las Vegas Police Department. Randy Sutton joins us here next. Stay with us. Five days after the deadliest mass shooting in American history, all of America is still asking the same question: why? Despite more than 1,000 tips, law enforcement still doesn't know what drove Stephen Paddock to shoot at hundreds of concert goers from his hotel window.
In the past, terror attacks or mass murder incidents, motive was made very clear in most of those cases, by a note that was left, by a social media post, by a telephone call that was made, by investigators mining computer data. Today, in our investigation, we don't have any of that uncovered.
Joining us tonight to help us better understand what is happening here, both in terms of the tragedy, the massacre itself, as well as the investigation into it, former Las Vegas Metro Police Lieutenant and Wounded Blue founder Randy Sutton. Randy, good to have you with us. Let's start with the timeline here and what we're learning from the law enforcement authorities in Vegas, and that is the shooting itself took place over about 10 minutes, about 72 minutes for law enforcement to secure the scene, if you will, the room in Mandalay Bay from which Stephen Paddock was massacring people by literally the dozens and wounding by the hundreds.
Lou, there's some information that just came out yesterday, as a matter of fact. The individual, this murdering, rampaging monster, Paddock, fired upon that crowd from a devastating position of elevation with incredible weaponry. He took an incredible amount of lives, and he altered the lives of many forever. However, there is a little bit of a misnomer here. The police were actually on the premises at Mandalay Bay taking a report, a crime report. Mm-hmm. And when the initial call came out, the call came out as an active shooter at the concert event. So these two officers, along with several security people from Mandalay Bay, began to run across the street where they thought the shooter was from. Well, at the same time this was taking place, the suspect was had broken out the glass, and it fell down into the valet area. The valets looked up, they heard the gunfire, and they reported the approximate location of the shooter. Now, at this point, the two officers, one of them is a brand new police officer, ran back into the building, went up to the 31st floor, and at that point, the other security officer had gotten separated, gone up to the 32nd floor, and was shot. The other officer, the Metro officer, at that point, the shooting had stopped. They went into the stairway and they isolated the room, isolated the hallway, preventing any type of escape, also being cognizant of any other shooters, because remember, during all this madness, it came out that there were other shooters taking place as well. So these officers secured that hallway, making sure that no one came or entered until the SWAT team could get there. Now, the reason for that time period, it actually only took, they were back on the scene within about 12 or 13 minutes, but the shooting had stopped because apparently, from my time reference here, right after the security guard was shot, I think that Paddock turned the .357 on himself and took his own life.
And the security officer, wounded in the leg, stayed with the Metro police officers and some other security officers that had come up from the 31st floor. I mean, it's a remarkable, to me, it's remarkable that those officers charged, if you will, ran to the sound of guns rather than from it, and did not wait simply for a SWAT team. This is one of the things that's happening in law enforcement, is that now with active shooters, police departments all over the country, patrol officers are going straight after the shooter because of what can happen with a person so heavily armed with semi-automatic, and in this instance, as a result of the slide stocks, automatic fire, and the immense loss of life and wounded by the hundreds. I mean, it's extraordinary. So it's really remarkable. What we don't know is why there were 2 meals ordered. We don't know why there's a charger in the room that doesn't go with any of the phones that the phone that Paddock had. Do you have a sense of the answers here?
Well, I do believe that this is part of one of the major cruxes of this investigation at this point is who is this mystery person? Just as you said, there was denoted on the room service that there were 2 diners, and there's also a report that there was a mystery woman seen with this suspect. And the last person to be with him is going to be of critical importance to this investigation. Was it an accomplice? Was it someone who was aiding him? Was it a prostitute that he had called up for his last pleasure? We don't know the answer to these questions. And I think what you heard in the undersheriff's statement about where this investigation is an incredible amount of frustration.
You bet.
These I have from my sources up in the department that this is actually an incredibly frustrating set of circumstances for them, because usually by now you have some sense of motivation, and at this point they simply don't. 5 days later, and we have video from all over the hotel that should be answering part of that. It's almost the appearance, as I listen to the sheriff, the undersheriff, I hear frustration. In my judgment, it's frustration. And it's as if they're being slow-walked on this investigation by other authorities, whether it be the FBI or some other agency. It's a very peculiar, almost European approach to disseminating information. Very quickly, we're out of time, Randy, but your thought. Well, I can tell you this. I think the thing that we really need to take pride in is the incredible courage shown by law enforcement, by the amazing compassion shown by those that were taking fire and yet stopped to help those who needed their help even more.
I take that and offer it up. I also have a lot of questions, and I got to believe those law enforcement officers want to provide them. Randy Sutton, thanks for being here to help us. We're coming right back. Much more straight ahead. Stay with us. Joining us tonight, Ed Rollins, former chief political advisor of the House Republican leadership. He's also a political director and served in 3 presidential administrations. Ed Rollins, good to have you here. Let me turn to Tillerson, calling the president a moron. The State Department saying no case. The president saying he's got confidence in him. Your thoughts?
I think his tenure is short. If he called him a moron, it deserves to be short. As I said on the show before, one guy got the votes. He's the one that basically gets to pick a team, and everybody on his team reflects both his power and also everything they do reflects back on him.
Apparently, the vice president, the Secretary of State's spokesman, R.C. Hammond, basically is accused of lying, making up a story about Mike Pence asking whether or not Nikki Haley was a credit or a liability to the administration, to which Tillerson was supposedly responded in the negative.
Well, I think that's another strike against him, because obviously she's done a very effective job, and she's also a presidential appointee, and she's also the front spokesperson for the world for this administration. So I think she's done well. Maybe a little jealousy, and I think to a certain extent we're now getting UN ambassadors who basically don't feel they click their heels and report to the secretary; they report to the president.
You know, there's no questioning the service of a number of the folks in this administration, the achievements of them all, but their manners and their sense of respect and civility and order for the President of the United States. I mean, you could have done better picking it random from the streets of nearly any city in the country.
As Henry Kissinger used to say, open the Washington Post, open the Washington phone book and you get better people. My problem here is that this is a president who came in and said he was going to come in and be a real change agent. And I think that he means it. When he says to the North Koreans, lay down your arms, stop your nuclear program, he means it.
But what we have is a president who has some people who are absolutely, several of them, absolutely gutless enough to respond to a U.S. senator in the way that they have, to make statements that are clearly disrespectful of the president. And if they're not smart enough to understand that and mannered enough to forego such conduct, why the hell would you want them in your administration?
Well, you wouldn't. And it's time. I think what happened to the president is he got elected. He thought he was going to get elected. I thought he was going to get elected. You thought he was going to get elected. Most of the people in town did not think he was going to get elected. He's going there to change. I think he didn't have a team in place. I think he.
But I'm talking about now. I mean, the run up to this, history is history.
Right.
I'm talking about now with it all on the line.
Well, now it's time. If you're not 100% for him and want to support him, get out.
The calm before the storm. You should, I don't know if you heard the media today, the left-wing media clucking and clacking.
Well,
what did he mean with that?
I think
he said it twice, you know.
I think he meant it twice, and I think when he said it to the highest level people of the military who would have a nice dinner with their family, he depends on those people, and I think the message is, if the North Koreans don't do what I told them to do, then there is not going to be calm. There's going to be exactly what I said there would be, and we're not going to basically pussyfoot around here. If we're going to take these guys out, we're going to take them out. It's like the old days, the sheriffs would put a sign, if you don't bring your guns to town, you pay a price. These guys, if they don't lay this thing down, we've tried to appease.
We're 9 months in, and there's been a lot of statements about what we're going to do. Hell and fury. Fire and fury.
Well, my sense, if they don't play well, we need to do what we need to do.
Ed Rollins.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you. Up next, Louisiana declaring a state of emergency. Tropical storm Nate is bearing down and likely to hit the Gulf Coast of Louisiana this weekend. We'll have a full report for you from New Orleans, an outlook on the dangerous storm's path. Stay with us. We're coming right back with much, much more. Here we go again. A hurricane warning in effect tonight for New Orleans and the Gulf Coast. Residents there bracing for Tropical Storm Nate. Forecasters now expect the storm to make landfall as a Category 1 hurricane over the weekend. Fox News correspondent Casey Stiegel in New Orleans tonight with our report.
Tropical Storm Nate has already pummeled parts of Central America, killing at least 22 people and dropping extreme amounts of rain on Nicaragua and Costa Rica. Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula is next. The popular tourist destinations of Cancun and Cozumel are expected to take a direct hit on Friday night. From there, forecasters say Nate will move into the Gulf of Mexico, where warm waters will help it strengthen into a Category 1 hurricane before making a U.S. landfall late Saturday or early Sunday.
Although overall rainfall may not be as high as other tropical events, short durations of rain, as we can see, can produce flooding.
The National Hurricane Center says it's still too early to tell exactly where Nate will come ashore. Models show anywhere from southeast Louisiana to points further east in Mississippi, Alabama, or Florida.
Everything on the bottom floor of my house is going up 3 feet. And if it goes higher than that, well, we're in trouble.
Lines already started forming at gas stations across the region, many filling up their tanks on the way out of town.
It's been crazy. Get it while you can, because it might be hard to get it later.
Energy companies have already begun evacuating and shutting down some of their offshore oil production platforms. Experts say that could take about 15% of the total U.S. refining capacity offline. And in New Orleans, all eyes are on these giant pumping stations, which help move water out of the Big Easy. But the system has been plagued with recent mechanical problems, and crews have been furiously working to get the issues fixed. City officials say now more than 80% of them are operational and have confidence they'll do their job for whatever Nate brings their way. According to the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center, 3 to 6 inches of rain is expected, with up to a foot in some isolated places. And some of the coastal areas could see a storm surge of anywhere from 4 to 8 feet, which is why these sandbagging operations going on at a fire station in northern New Orleans will be going on well until Nate arrives. That is the latest from New Orleans. Lou, back to you.
Casey, thank you very much. Casey Stiegel. Well, turning now to a heartwarming story out of Salt Lake City, Utah. 11-year-old Tana Lynn Butterfield, her brother Tegan, and sister Tally are being adopted after a 2-year wait, and they gained a new brother and sister as well. Tana couldn't contain her excitement when she first heard the life-changing news, as you see here in this video that has gone viral now. She had this message for other children hoping to find a family of their own.
I would tell other kids in the world that are waiting to get adopted that you will get adopted no matter what, and that you will find people that care about you and love you, just like I did.
A delighted young lady, and all best. Up next, Thursday night football ratings. Well, suggesting that respect for all things American, including our anthem and our flag, does count. We'll take that up with Dom Giordano and Deirdre Bolton right after the break. Stay with us. In our online poll last night, we asked you, do you believe the Senate Intelligence Committee should be investigated for making a mockery of senatorial oversight and wasting more taxpayer money? 97% of you say yes. A little respect goes a long way when it comes to even the NFL, which has shown immense disrespect for the flag, the anthem, and for their fans. Every player on both the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and New England Patriots last night stood for the national anthem, and that helped the ratings a bit. 12% up from last week, 26% from the year before. And Cam Newton apparently didn't get the memo. He raised his fist in a Black Power salute during last week's game, insulting a female reporter days later, his sponsor Dannon severing ties as a result. But for many fans, NFL players coming to their senses a bit late. A Seton Hall poll shows 29% of those surveyed that they're watching the NFL less. Well, joining me tonight, radio talk show host Dom Giordano. Dom, good to see you. Fox Business's
Same here, Lou.
Deirdre Bolton, great to see you, Deirdre.
Thank you.
Let's start with the numbers real quickly. Unemployment dropping to 4.2%. But losing jobs.
Losing jobs, but there are anomalies. We've talked about the hurricanes.
Because of the hurricanes.
Yes, so that played a big role. But what was really nice to see was this labor force participation rate going up.
More people employed than ever before.
That's right. So that's a win. That's a win. And I know that there's some discord sometimes from mainstream media about what these numbers...
Left-wing media.
Yes.
Left-wing media. In the main,
what the numbers mean, but we heard from Gary Cohn as well, actually even saying he's excited. Okay, anomalies aside, it's a pretty good data set. Also, wage growth going up year on year, 2.9%. That's great. The people, more people have jobs, people who have them earning a little bit more. Good.
That's the stuff of which prosperity is made.
Yeah, indeed.
Let's go to Dom and find out what you think about those NFL numbers, partner.
Hey, I love it, Lou. I talked a little bit about that today on my show, and I think it's a really good indicator of what's happened. And again, President Trump took something that he was told was minor. You and I know it's not minor. People care about this.
Deeply.
And I think inside the NFL, you're seeing some owners who are doing various things behind the scenes to pull this in. And it's a broader thing. Could there be one area of life where there's going to be respect for traditional values? You would think the NFL would be one. Has Roger Goodell got the message? Maybe Lou Dobbs ought to deliver it to him.
Oh, I've been delivering it to him. Don't worry, partner. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
I'm delivering another one tonight, and that is, Deirdre, the NFL owners have a second chance. They have not signed a new contract, apparently, with Roger Goodell. He's a little worried about his severance package, which he wants in think about this, 9 figures. They have a chance to take this loser and get him the hell out of their business, because he damn near ruined their business substantially, absolutely, and completely over the past 3 weeks.
He has done some damage, but he has survived numerous other scandals in the past. So I don't know
That's what I'm saying.
Happen.
They're getting another chance. I mean, they were going to write him another big check. Why? Why, Dom?
Yeah, I don't understand that either, Lou. I mean, this guy has mishandled just about everything. He's unliked. The argument was he was growing their business. I know the NFL thinks they're too big to fail, but the numbers
they know
indicate
better now.
that that's not. They are not. They are not bulletproof on this stuff.
Absolutely not. We're watching kids, by the hundreds, drop out of football. There are high schools that can't even field teams right now in the country.
No,
exactly.
It's true. And even just worldwide, I know the NBA signed something like a $24 billion content deal over a 10-year period. The idea in China, people love to watch U.S. basketball. The NFL does not have that pull, at least in China.
Dom, you get the last word. Donald Trump, calm before the storm?
Lou, it's hard to imagine he wasn't just tweaking us with that, that's some kind of giveaway about North Korea. I know he likes to have fun with this. Maybe go a little bit easy on that. Not too many of that over the weekend.
To go easy on what?
Go easy on these reality twisters, the calm before the storm.
You don't want him to go, come on. You want another dull, boring president? Boring you to death and the rest of us? No, we want a guy that talks truth. That's the thing people forget. This guy they can't take because he talks straight and he isn't politically correct. Dom, I got to run. Deirdre, thanks for being here. Dom, thank you. That's it for us tonight, and thank you for being with us. We'll be joined by Arizona Senate candidate Kelly Ward and Rachel Campos Duffy among our guests Monday. Please join us for that. Until then, have a splendid weekend and good night from New York.